And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Coastal water marine forecast here. South coast, southeast winds to 10 knots. Central coast, east winds at 15 knots. About the same up here to the north. Winds out of the east at 15 to 20 knots. Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, Stevens Passage, north at 20. Southeast 15 for Clarence Strait. And for the day Friday, south coast here, southeast winds 20 to 25 knots. North coast, east-southeast at 20 to 25 knots. North at 20 for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Stevens Passage. Southeast 20 for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, southeast wind 10 knots. Variable winds 10 to 15 knots for the North Gulf Coast. And for Cook Inlet, northeast winds 15 to 20 knots. East at 20 for Kamishak Bay, southeast winds 20 knots for the Barren Islands. And for Friday, Prince William Sound, northeast wind 10 knots. And east winds 15 to 20 knots for the North Gulf Coast, east at 20 for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay. Kodiak Island, east winds 15 to 20 knots Tuesday or for Thursday. And northeast winds 20 knots Bristol Bay, all the way down the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, Cape Sarachev. And then northeast 25 knots for the Pacific side of the peninsula. And for the day Friday, Kodiak Island, east to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, and we've got north to northwest winds at 20 to 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. And for the Fox Islands, northeast winds 15 to 25 knots, northwest 25 for Adak and Atka, and northwest winds anywhere from 30 to 35 knots for the Western Aleutians. For Friday, Western Aleutians, we've got kind of variable winds here, variable gale force winds from the west to southeast at 35 to 40 knots. And for Adak and Atka, northwest at 25, north to northwest 20 to 25 for the Eastern Aleutians. And for Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta coast, right on down Cape Neuenam, north winds 20 knots for Thursday. Northeast 25 for St. Matthew, St. Paul, and St. George Islands. And for Friday, northwest at 20 for the Pribilof, St. Matthew Island north at 15, and north to northwest winds for the southwest coast at 20 knots, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island north at 15. And for the Chukchi Sea tomorrow, we've got northwest to northeast winds at 15 to 35 knots. Strongest winds actually here from Point Lay to Point Hope. That's where the gale force winds will be. Otherwise, central and eastern Arctic coast, east-northeast at 20. And for the day on Friday, central and western Arctic coast, east-northeast at 30 knots. Brisk wind advisories also for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast for 30-knot winds out of the east. And the Chukchi Sea, north to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots.